Alright, welcome back. Let's talk about some macro stuff. Finally, some volatility came back into the market, which we've been waiting for forever. First of all, this is not financial advice. Consult your licensed financial advisor before doing anything. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. These are just my opinions and my thoughts on macro stuff, learning how to trade. And I could be wrong. I'm never always right. And do not invest anything you're not willing to lose or lose sleep over. Have stops in place, emotions out. Alright, it's the S&P 500. This is a 31-day chart, monthly chart. It's just a clean chart. So, if the market falls, I would say below 3,300, the S&P, then this will definitely be a shooting star, which would signal a nice correction. But you know what? Before I go into the TA and the charts, let's just go over some news. So last week everyone was panicking because, you know, complacency, right? Stocks only go up. Davey Day Trader is like, oh my god, what's going on? Twitter, do something. He lost like 4 mil in the blink of an eye. And that's funny because in the grand scheme of things, he lost so much, and it was a pretty decent sized move. But in the grand scheme of things, he's still very near the all-time high. Now, yeah, this is a multi-decade time frame here. I'm just zooming out. This is 1971 back here. I'm just showing you guys an eagle's view. But you know what? Let's go over some news or things I thought were interesting. It's been kind of boring, really, for the past month. Besides what's going on, you know, socially. So, After the Plunge, What's Next for Markets by Tyler Durden. You know, I read through all of this. The CARES Act, there's no progress. Like, the lefties aren't going to be able to push through $2 trillion worth of pretty much, I don't want to say, well, it's stimulus, bailouts, and funding all sorts of programs, right? That's a lot of money, $2 trillion. And what did I say? The Fed's balance sheet's going to go to like 10 trillion by the year's end. I still think it will. I believe it's somewhere around 6 or 7 right now. But because of the election, I don't think they're going to be passing much until afterwards. Or even then, they might not. It depends who wins, right? If the left wins, yeah, they'll pass trillions. If the right wins, stimulus is still going to get passed, but it's going to take longer because there's going to be opposition. And then, you know, it's questionable because how things are going to play out, because I feel like it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter who wins, but if Trump wins, they're going to contest it, and it might drag on for weeks and months. And that might be the plan, which I'm going to get into a little more later, how that's going to affect the markets. Gamma Reset and Mega Cap Tech. So all of the Robinhood Moon Boys have been putting on call options on the big tech stocks at all-time highs, which kept dragging the price higher and higher And what that does is the market rises on very, very low volume and low amount of money, and it's all margin. Because when you go in on options and you put on a bunch of call options, and if a lot of people do it at once, it like drags the price higher and higher on less liquidity or less money. So putting on a call option is it's multiples of the actual underlying money that's there, because it's on margin and it's leveraging up. So what it does is it creates pockets of no buying support, and as more calls are put on, it causes short squeezes. So the shorts get squeezed out. There's no one there to short it. No more shorts left. And then because all of the moon boys kept putting on call options, it just spiked the price. That's why Tesla went so high, and Apple, and all of them. And when the correction comes, for one, there's no more money and there's no more buying support. And I have a feeling a lot of people, because they're buying options because they don't really have a lot of money to buy the actual shares. So when momentum runs out, what happens is, for one, people have ran out of money to keep buying. That's why they're buying options, more bang for your buck. Two, there's no shorts to cover. So when you cover your short position, you have to buy back the stock, and it sort of puts in a stop to the selling, right? So that's why you get these huge volatility spikes, and then all of a sudden, the stock price just dumps like 15% in one day. And then all the algos jump on, and then everyone, in the bubble, in the speculative mania, a lot of them on Wall Street still know they're in it. And then they might start getting nervous because it fell so quickly. And then the moon boys and the retail investors, the noobs who don't have jobs, who get all, who are collecting unemployment plus extra on top, they panicked because they've never ever seen a bear market. Because a lot of sport bettors and gamblers came into the markets during COVID lockdowns, right? Record equity issuance upcoming, $308 billion so far year to date in the U.S., or the 100th percentile back to 2008. So when there's equity issuance, companies are looking for money. And they'll do it numerous ways. They'll issue corporate bonds. They'll do initial public offerings, right? Private companies will go public. Or public companies will issue more shares like Tesla did to sell them to raise cash because they're not as profitable. It's not really based off of expanding their business. They're just kind of bailing themselves out with investors and people's retirements. September trading seasonality. Well, there's a couple seasonalities, right? People will get a little nervous going up towards the election. It's third quarter. We're going into fall soon. It's actually bearish for the market, seasonality-wise. You usually see a correction. And then, if the fourth quarter was good, you'll either see another correction in the first quarter, based off of seasonality. It's never for certain, though. Anything could trigger a real correction. But if the fourth quarter was good, then a rebound at the end of first quarter or the second quarter. But I don't really pay too much attention to all of that. Diminishing systematic bid. Morgan Stanley now sees only a few billion of global equities to buy versus prior growth estimates. I mean, because the market kept raging higher all summer, um, I mean, everything is still, everything's overvalued. I mean, momentum it's ran its course. Can't just keep going up, like I said in previous videos, and I've been saying for like 2 months now. Diminishing bid from retail. Next round of stimulus checks may matter. I don't think we're gonna see those checks for a few months, if not a while. And I feel like, as time goes on, people are gonna be less speculative. Right now, people still think normality is gonna come back and the economy is gonna rebound stronger than ever, and everyone's kind of betting on that. I mean, that's what the market's betting on. That's why it's been rallying all summer, right? Well, maybe as a Lehman Brothers event happens, or it kind of sets into human psyche for the masses that going back to the normal prior to COVID is probably not going to happen, or it might not happen, or it's going to take many years. And that's what's really going to happen. That's what I think is going to happen. We're not going to go back to 2019-18. I believe that as time actually goes on, yeah, the Fed's going to be there supporting equities in the markets, but on Main Street in the real economy, you're going to see more pressure, rampant unemployment, and I do not think things are going to get better. And honestly, the cost of food is slowly still going higher and higher, and everything else. So another thing is, are they going to launch more MMT or unemployment? I have a feeling they're going to keep the current unemployment going. Well, there's two theories, right? If the right wins, they'll probably keep the current unemployment going, and they'll just do one more round of stimulus checks or whatever. But after that, they're going to pull back. They're going to stop, because you're going to see inflation pick up quickly. Probably by this time next year, everyone's going to notice it, even the normies. So they can't keep going. Now, if the left wins, they're going to keep going until it gets really bad. And but they might even try MMT or whatever, and the money velocity is going to pick up, and it's going to pick up much quicker than anyone would think. So far, money velocity is still sort of trapped, and all of the inflation is in the markets. It's in the stock market and all that. So I think if the market actually fell a decent amount, a huge correction, like 30% or something, then I feel like people will start pulling. The boomers are going to panic. They're going to pull money out, and then inflation is going to start running high. This is the worst case scenario. And then everyone starts spending money because they're afraid it's not going to be worth as much in the future. And that's when you get that crack up boom. I don't want to say hyperinflation, but super high stagflationary environment. Meanwhile, high unemployment as well, because the state has destroyed a lot of small businesses, like around half of them, which is the backbone of the economy. Diminishing bid for retail. So I do see the moon boys sort of going away as they as volatility picks up in the market, and it's going to in the next few weeks, because we're gonna see volatility is gonna pick up. All right, going into the election, there's gonna be October surprise, all kinds of things, and then if there's a contested election, volatility is definitely gonna pick up for the markets. and who knows what else, right? Unrest. Elevated high frequency exposure nets and gross at the 66th and 89th percentile. I'm not sure about that. Mutual fund year end. Will we finally see outflows, profit taking if tax loss selling was pulled forward? Honestly, I would. So, hedge funds and institutional investors, for tax purposes, they might they might get out before year's end, which everyone says that every year's end though. But I think they will, especially as volatility picks up. And I'll get to the charts and we'll talk about if the top's in or whatever. Election I was talking about that. Permeations. U.S.-China re-escalation, hence focus on SMIC over the weekend. Setbacks in the reopening, second wave. Okay, so it all depends on who gets elected. If the right, then I don't think there's really going to be a second wave. I mean, maybe in the big cities, in the blue ones, yeah. But that's not about the. I don't know. New York can't handle anymore. Neither can California. I mean, I'm surprised people are putting up with it. A lot of them are just fleeing. But I mean, if there's a second wave, I don't think people are going to put up with it. But again, it all depends on who gets elected and what goes on and how long, let's say, and what I mean by contested, I mean there's not going to be any definite results because that's what's going on right now. I have to be careful what I say, this and that, because a lot of people have been getting purged off of this platform. Like, my subscriptions, more than half are gone. Like, they're just nuking accounts. And they're doing it to everyone now. It's not even just the right. So, by the way, find me on other platforms. Because you never know. I was going to say this other tuber's name, but I'm afraid to say it. I posted in my newsroom, so if you're in my newsroom, you'll find those videos, and you know what I'm talking about. All right, so what else is going on? This is kind of creepy, but it's also practical. I don't know anything about this technology. I haven't really researched into it. These new these nuclear power plants, these new ones, but apparently China is making them now, or is the first to. But the first one was helped make Westinghouse company helped them make the first new gen reactor. Westinghouse makes shitty TVs, so that sort of makes me nervous. And another thing that makes me nervous is that Gates, and I'm talking Bill, is trying to be the one to build all of the ones in the U.S., which creeps me out because I do not trust that guy. And what I mean by that is, what if he just presses a button and they just all go off at once? But if it's about new forms of energy creation, then yeah, that's great. I just don't like having thousands, and by the way, China wants to make hundreds and hundreds of these power plants. And I mean, we had Chernobyl, Fukushima. I mean, and that's just two that went wrong, right? I, By the way, great show on HBO. You should watch that if you haven't. Chernobyl. It was great. And you know, what if there's a huge sun flare? What if an asteroid hits the planet? I mean, for all summer we had like 5 supposed asteroids that were gonna take us out. I don't know why they even do that. I think it's just to spread fear. But someday there will be maybe an asteroid shower or something more serious. It's very possible. And when that happens, I guarantee you they probably won't even give us a warning. Maybe a day's warning or something. Or they just won't tell us. But there is a new movie coming out. I want to see it. I like those, movies. But what I'm trying to say is, if something like that happened, there was a huge tsunami or maybe earthquakes, it sticks around for many, many years. Now, I know there's theories out there that it's not even bad for you. I don't want to get into it. But you know what? Our appetite, our global humanity's demand for more electricity is just never going to end. And I know that there's better ways out there, even better than nuclear. So you guys know what I mean. I don't want hundreds and thousands of these all over the planet. It's a great way to So what I mean by EMP, by like a solar flare, if a solar flare hit the Earth, it would knock out these power plants. Yeah, they have backup generators, but if there was a big enough flare, even their backup generators would run out of fuel eventually. You know what I'm saying? That's where my mind runs when I see these articles. Authored by Charles Hugh Smith via Two Minds blog. Alright, I'm going to read this one because this was good. Title is In the Footsteps of Rome. Maybe it no longer matters who's the emperor. So, before I read this, there's so many things going on today that just echo textbook end of Rome. There's quite a few documentaries out there. You should find them. There's this one that was really, really good. I'm going to try to find it and I'll post it in the newsroom. But there's just so many red flags and historical similarities between Rome and the US and the West. Not just the US, I mean Europe as well. The things that go on in the West are not really going on in the rest of the world. Like all of this SJW stuff, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll post it in the newsroom. There's this one that is really, really good. I even emailed the guy. I was like, hey, can I use this and post it on my channel? And he never emailed me back because it was so good. But he had a small channel. Anyways, quick history quiz. Who was the second to the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire? How about the third to the last? Answers. Glycerius. Julius Nepos. The last emperor was the grandly titled Romulus Augustus, who reigned less than a year until the whole shebang disintegrated. You get the point. When the momentum of the collapse crosses the event horizon, it no longer matters who claims the title of the head snake. Now, I do remember in those documentaries, there was times in Rome where the emperor was just, nobody cared. It got to the point where nobody cared, and it was somewhat lawlessness and just mass corruption. The collapse is beyond the control of any individual or agency, which is what I used to talk about. People think there's this grandiose plan where the aristocracy and the elite, like somehow there's just have control over all of us and whatever. And yeah, there is plans, but they're not going to be able to implement them because it's going to be so chaotic, and in the end, no one's going to care. It's good. All that's going to really matter is who you know and who are your friends in life, and probably your location. So when I hear the most important election in history, last chance for democracy, etc., I hear blah 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 because we're following the footsteps of Rome's collapse to a T, as explained in How Nations Collapse Disunity 8/2020. Profound disunity between classes within power elites is the key driver of collapse, as all the energy required to make the perilous radical changes needed to save the system are squandered on a fighting and jockeying for control of the dwindling centralized power. And I notice it already. What you see in the end here is everyone is really just fighting over the crumbs and money and power, but mainly money for their own survival. It's kind of like everyone's just jumping off the Titanic into the life rafts, but there's really not enough left. And I'll give you a good example. A lot of people like to virtue signal, right? But they do it for money, really, in the end. A lot of, I'm not saying all of them, maybe a lot of them do believe it, but they're not really that committed to it. It's really just about money. The final generation of Romans also preferred pretense to reality. The last Roman elites found solace in Rome's past glories, as if it was inevitable that something or other would magically restore Rome's power and stability without any sacrifices being made by the elites or the public. You know what comes to mind as I read that? MAGA. Literally. Make the US great again, right? Nostalgia of the past. I even find myself doing it on Twitter. I somehow I'm following a bunch of architectural people who post pictures of buildings from the Renaissance and the Middle Ages, those big cathedrals and castles and statues. I mean, just looking at videos from the past, like 1600, 1700, not videos, but pictures, and buildings from the past. But there's videos from early 1900s, and it looked really great. Like the detail in the buildings, the concrete or the stones, it just looked different, and in a very pleasing way from buildings today. Just the detail, it looks beautiful compared to everything today. I would rather look at a 1600s, 15, 13 even hundreds castle or cathedral or church than some giant megalithic rectangular glass building. And they're trying to get creative with the glass buildings today and make them look more put more curves and twists into them. And yeah, they look cool, but it doesn't look, it's still not as, it still doesn't look as good as architecture from the 1600s, this and that, because those took decades to build, and they were built by hand, and there was detail and put into them, and it's art. A lot of the sculptures and buildings, even from the Roman times and even prior, cannot be rebuilt by modern engineers. Oh, I posted something about Roman roads. Those are still around. The Roman aqueducts, the roads, the buildings, everything, right? They're still around. And even prior to that, there's the Aztec um, pyramids, the Egyptians. There's all sorts of buildings from the past that have stood up to the test of time for hundreds and thousands of years. Do you think the buildings that are being built today, the homes and all that, is going to last another 100 years or 200? No. Without maintenance, they'll just crumble or rust away. Today we hear the shrill cries from the pretense of unity, since actual unity has been lost. Then public relations pretense is the best the elites can manage. So unity, I mean, we see division pretty much everywhere now, on almost everything. And everything's been, politicized. Just as in the waning days of the Western Roman Empire, the elites got overly greedy and complacent, a fatal combination. America's billionaire class and the new nobility just below the billionaires have scooped most of the economy's gains since 2008 and paid either zero or low taxes, just as Mr. Gates. How to make your fortune tax-free. Right, I mean, as the higher the markets go up, the bigger the wealth gap. And the middle class has just been gutted. By the way, a lot of the middle class, most of the middle class, at least in Western civilization, or really everywhere, is small businesses. Small businesses create the middle class. And once that's gone, you just have a two-class system, right? The haves and have not. Once you have a big tech monopoly, the political influence to protect your monopoly, and the Feds juicing stocks, junk bonds, etc., then your greed has no limit. Right, and we're seeing it play out right now. And here's the problem. A lot of people are complaining that, again, that everyone else gets crumbs, a $1,200 check, while the corporations and the banks, all of them just get the bailout. Which is true. The problem is the system has been created by money printing. So if they don't bail out the big institutions, the whole damn thing falls apart. And that's what people don't understand. Yeah, they could not bail them out, but then everything just falls apart instantly. They won't even be able to send checks out to people because there won't be any banks. So that's the problem. So they can't not bail them out. They're literally too big to fail. Now, it was sort of a lie in 2008. They probably could have let them fail or maybe break them up into smaller pieces, right? And then bail them out. That's what they should have done if they're going to do it at all. But now, because we did bail them out in 2008, now they really, really are really too big to fail. Decades ago, there used to be tens of thousands of banks. Now there's really a few dozen. I mean, yeah, there's hundreds, but maybe 1,000 or two, but nothing like it used to be. I'm saying most people, like 99% of people, bank with the big five or something like that, banks out there, right? Alright, America squandered its last chance to make necessary sacrifices and changes, like back in 2008, the global financial meltdown. Right, that was the last chance to steer the ship away from hitting the iceberg. We could have let everything reset then, and everyone, we would have had a pretty deep recession. It would have been painful, but right now, we would be coming out of it and would be much stronger. But, it's not the tale of empires. And, a lot of people don't like how I criticize the boomers, but that gen is leading the ship. And they just do not want to they didn't want to see their 401ks go down. So there you have it. Human wetware 1.0 hasn't changed since 473 AD. And so our elites are filled with the same complacent hubris as the last batch of greedy, entitled, overly impressed with their wealth and power elites of Rome. Right, I mean, Tale of Empires, right? See, there's that saying, the empire that starts off the smallest dies the largest. So the saying goes something like that, and it's not exactly the same. Don't quote. It's not the quote. So an empire that starts off the smallest and has the most freedom will grow to be the largest and the most powerful and the richest. But towards the end, so what that does is it creates an extremely large elite class, and then it becomes generational, the wealth and the money, and yeah, it becomes about who you know, not what you know. And when it's who you know, not what you know, you don't actually get the most talented and the smartest and most efficient people running the largest corporations and everything else, right? And even politics. It becomes generational leadership. And we all know the rich kid growing up. They can never really fill their parents' shoes. Yes, they are taught. Now, I would say the first generation, so the first generation who built the wealth and the empire or the business, who was really smart, his son will try to live up to their father's name, but they usually can't. And then their kids are even worse. And by third generation, most of the wealth is squandered, and those kids end up being just spoiled brats. The third gen, right? So the rise of the U.S., it definitely started in, it started in the 1700s, but it really started picking up in the half of 1800s and up, right? From the oil boom, industrial revolution, right? Now, how many generations have taken place since then? Well, we are now in the third to fourth generation, and they're getting old. So, and this also ties into money, world reserve currency status. The U.S. is already in the final phase, because all fiat currencies, hegemony, they don't last forever. I don't have the chart in front of me right now, but they usually only last a couple hundred years at the most. But really, it's like maybe 5 decades on average. I forgot what the average was, but no, 5 decades doesn't sound right. I think it's maybe around 80 years, or around 80 to 150 years, and then it gets passed on to the next. Well, it doesn't immediately get passed on. There's like a period where the transfer happens, right? What else? The Fed will continue to bail out all those whose self-serving greed undermine the republic. Right. I mean, at this point, it's everyone is grabbing what they can off the Titanic. Maybe they're raiding the stores on the ship, or grabbing what's left before they jump off onto the lifeboats, and there aren't enough. And you're gonna see that it's gonna be everyone out for themselves, and it's pillaging, and that's just human nature. but the higher you go in power, the more evident and the more they grab for themselves, right? As a result, there is no way to stop the dominoes from falling. Pretense. You know what? Let me read the rest of this because it might be good. All right. The Fed will continue to bail out all those whose self-serving greed undermine the republic and print trillions to distribute bread and circuses to placate the milling mob. True. That's why I don't think the second wave's... I mean, they might do a second wave, but it'll be like partial. So there's a couple agendas, right? One is to track, trace, and take away freedoms. The other one is to not make it as bad because they need to still have sports and the circuses back to keep the mobs from going out into the street and eventually destroying everything. Although you could argue they're letting it happen now, which is true, but it's an election season. That's why they're really out there. But that's not going to stop either. Okay? That's going to keep going and going, especially once things get really hard, right? And, you know, everything at the end of the day is about getting free stuff or taking your piece of the pie. And that's what it's come to. And again, I will say this almost every video. The good times create weak men. Weak men and women create the hard times, and the hard times create strong men. And the cycle continues. Everything's fractal. Alright, let's do the dominoes here. Pandemic triggers mass layoffs. Uncertainty is the new normal. Capital and trade flows disrupted. True. Global trade is just in shambles right now. There's another article we'll talk about. High cost small businesses fold, money velocity collapses as savings roar. Alright, so we're kind of coming out of this right now. This part. The high cost small businesses fold, money velocity collapses. Alright, we are still at money velocity has collapsed, but I have a feeling we're going to come out of that in 2021 rather quickly. Because the Fed's going to continue to print, and they're going to do some sort of more stimulus and MMT something. Or UBI, right? Universal Basic Income. Zombie corporations rush to borrow billions, but this only delays their insolvency. True. So here's the fourth domino. Service sector dependent on top 5% household spending implodes. Tech managerial class lays off surprise protected class. Right, so Silicon Valley, those people, they think they're going to forever have jobs and job security. That's not true. Eventually, once revenues and the balance sheets are so destroyed and inflation really picks up, it doesn't matter how much the Fed buys corporate bonds and everything. Companies have to trim the fat because there's no reason to have all those employees because they're not selling anything in the end. State and local taxes plummet, federal bailouts run out, local government employment slashed. We're not there yet, but we're probably going to get there. Now, at the back of my mind, I'm still thinking there's going to be some sort of dead cat bounce if Orange Man there gets reelected, and maybe towards the middle of 2021, like the summer or fall, you'll get a crazy amount of money pumped into the economy, infrastructure spending, all of that. And they're going to juice the economy, which may buy us another few more years. But then after that, inflation's really going to run hot. And then these dominoes are still going to play out and fall as is. But we might see like a year or two of a dead cat bounce, which would be awesome for us. Because metals are going to keep going higher during that entire time. Defaults and bankruptcies explode higher, triggering catastrophic losses in banking and derivatives. Yeah. When we see that is your signal to head for the hills, you better not be in high populated areas. once this happens. It's going to get bad and ugly. Safe sectors crushed: tech, healthcare, higher education, finance, no safe havens left except for metals. At some point, the states are just gonna go bust. Now, I read somewhere a few days ago that one of the pensions, I believe in Ohio, bought some metals. Well, good for them. And that's just one. Just wait until they all start doing it, because there will be nowhere else to go for safety, and it will be the only way for them not to lose most of everything. So, and that's when we see metals go to the moon and our stocks go to a different galaxy far, far away. What's next? Shots fired on India-China flashpoint border. Yeah, so geopolitically, this is something to watch, but everyone sort of ignores. Because India doesn't want to be China's, in their shadows. And if you guys have paid attention, Orange Man was definitely making big deals with India and making them a big ally. So we see on the global sphere people taking sides. In India's with the U.S., right? For this huge global hegemony, power struggle, and something to watch. Like, believe me, it's not about the land here. Or maybe it is about the land. Maybe they want to get the Silk Road going through here. But really, India is a competitor to China for global trade. Lately, I've seen a lot of stuff that used to be made in China, made in Vietnam now. If you guys haven't noticed. India test fires next-gen hypersonic weapons system. Yeah, they're building out. It's at least a Cold War right now. So, believe you me, if something big breaks out globally, which is historically is what happens when you have huge currency crisis and debt and credit crises globally, especially with a globalized economy that we have today. You can see conflicts break out globally by major countries. If that happens, our metals are going to go to a different dimension. Sell the Rational Overhyped Bubble Nonsense. Authored by Bill Blaine via morningporridge.com. Alright, so whatever's next. That's what everyone wants to know. What's next? So let's read this and I'll give you guys my opinion and thoughts. It still feels like the correction is underway, but does it actually matter? The narrative is already moving on about the big rotation from the tech into, well, what? That's a good question, because everyone, it's been the tech bubble, right? The tech bubble. The FANGs have been leading this giant equity bubble for the last, for a while now. I mean, we had the dot-com bubble. That popped, and then we had, housing bubble as well at the same time. And now, for the past 10 years or so, we've had a giant tech bubble. What do you guys think is going to come after? Now, I do see them trying to push for 5G smart cities and sort of bubble, 5G bubble. I don't think the 5G bubble would be as big as this one, and it could, somehow pull all the equities higher and higher. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Now, this is based off of the fact that globally there won't be any hot wars, right? Like a world war or anything. And this is based off of the assumption that the printing presses and the central banks will just keep printing, and equities will just keep going higher and higher. But maybe the tech bubble stocks will pop, and then they will trade sideways while they start another bubble, a new bubble, like a 5G bubble. Can that happen? Yeah, sure. Maybe for a few more years. At the same time, I mean, commodities and resources are going to go into their bull market. I mean, there's going to be other bubbles, I guess, because metals and commodities and materials and energy are also going to go into their own bubble, but that'll be due to high inflation and safe haven. So that's the best case scenario for like the next 5 to 10 years, right? The worst case scenario is the credit and the bond market and the currencies. I don't want to say hyperinflation, but inflation runs really, really high, and unemployment is just unbelievably high, and small businesses aren't created and they don't come back. Regulations aren't taken away, and and more tax. Basically, our giant states, our centralized authorities and powers still stay in power, and they don't shrink themselves while they keep everything zombified. And then we have super high inflation running at the same time, and then civil unrest and power struggles and pretty much what's going on as of late. If that continues for the next 5 years, I mean, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to be a high stressful environment for everyone. I don't want to live in that. So we'll see what happens. I think it all really depends on who if the right stays in power or the left somehow takes power. But I don't think it's going to be weird. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Things might get good temporarily for the next 5 years if the right wins, economically and financially. But you're still going to have civil disobedience and all that running in the background, like in the cities. It all and there's going to be pockets, right? It all depends on where you live as well, regionally. Like Cali is probably not going to get better no matter what. So I don't know where that article is, but let me read this. Maybe it's still tech. I suspect this is where the tech sector diverges into the real and rational and out of the irrational stupid. Hold on, buy the dips on the strong fundamental growth tech stocks and sell the irrational overhyped bubble nonsense. Do I think the tech sector that has ran its course? I'm not sure, but probably. We might have had to blow off top for the fangs. And it started last week. That's what I mean. The ongoing pandemic disruption remains real, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read that. In terms of relative value, the effect of do whatever it takes central bank monetary splurges mean equities have become the only return game in town. Well, not really. I'm not going to read all that because I've talked about it. It all comes down to, is tech, are their sales going to keep expanding, and are they going to, come up with more innovation and sell more services and products going forward? Are people going to have the money to buy more Apple phones and all that? Or economically, is the stagflation going to wear on these big tech companies? And as of right now, they're still overvalued, and they're not in, their stock valuations do not reflect real fundamentals and real sales generated in the real world. So I think the top's in. Will they trade sideways forever? Yeah, probably for a while. Can they go up higher? Yes. So this is what's hard for people to understand. Yeah, their stock prices can go up, like value. Their stocks could go higher. That doesn't mean that the company's value is going higher if inflation starts running high as well. So nominally, their stock price is higher, but in reality, adjusted for inflation, you're still losing money holding their stocks. And the company's still losing money as well. But they're zombified because central banks are going to buy their corporate bonds and maybe even stocks. Swiss National Bank, for some reason, has been buying FANGs. I mean, they've been doing it for years. They've been buying Tesla since like 2016. It's insane. Or maybe it's Amazon. I forgot. They probably buy them all. So, which is insane. None of this should even be legal, but and the commoner, the average person, the simpletons, they have no idea any of this is happening. They have no idea how to even understand it. It's even hard for a lot of people in finance to understand what I'm saying. How it's all manipulated and it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's hard for an average person to understand how the wealth transfer is happening right now. Basically, central banks are printing money. It's backed by confidence, and the confidence game is that the taxpayers are going to pay it off someday plus interest, which will never happen through the state. And it's not. None of it's going to get paid. So there's a stealth tax, which is inflation, that people don't see or understand, and it happens so slowly and gradually, no one gets angry. Well, they do get angry over time, but you get extremist philosophies and people, as things get harder and the cost of living just keeps rising and rising and rising, people can't understand why and how this is happening. They just get mad, and then they fall into these echo chambers on the internet, which is devised, believe you me, by people at the top, and then they get radicalized, and then the people at the top pin everyone against each other, and then there you go. This is the world we live in. All right, I digress. I'm done. Let's browse through some more news. How long have I been going? Almost an hour now. You know what? I'm going to make a separate video for TA, and I'm just going to do that tomorrow because I can't keep talking. My throat is actually hurting. What's new? Wall Street explains why despite second wave, whatever. Hedge fund, U.S. stock bubble could rank among biggest in history. It is the biggest in history. I don't want to talk about that. Druckenmiller slams absolute raging mania in stocks, sees inflation hitting 10%. Wow, really? He came out and said that. On mainstream media. How to find value in upside down world. The only place you could find value and undervalued that's not extremely hard, because it's like finding a needle in the haystack, is mining stocks. It's a no-brainer, and it's the best place to look. And I just don't understand how more people haven't figured that out. Like I said, some people are just making money. Wow, he got Nobel Peace Prize. Good. I think he deserves it because he's pulling troops out of the sandbox. he's done a lot of good internationally, globally. All right, I'm done. I'm done, guys. Till next time.